Time now for Focus. Now, if I say adoption, chances are you're thinking about children. But in Japan, children represent a tiny fraction of all adoptions. More than 90% of adoptions there are actually adult men. Why? Well, in Japan's patriarchal society, handing over a family business to a woman is something that's just not done. Mary Linton and Justin McCurry sent us this report.
Chieko Date is a matchmaker who's prepared to do whatever it takes to succeed. Today, she's travelled from Tokyo to Fukuyama, more than 400 miles away, to accompany her male client in his quest for love. But when she quizzes him about his qualities, it sounds less like preparation for a date than for a job interview.
How do you think you could help this clinic?
This is a local clinic, so we should emphasize that and mention that it has accomplished a lot over a very long period of time.
Kazue Fuji is seeking a husband, but he must have one important qualification: the ability to run her father's clinic after he retires. If Yoda performs well at this interview and ends up marrying Fuji, he'll be legally adopted by his in-laws.
I worked hard to build this clinic, but I don't know how long I can continue working. So I do need a successor.
My parents have 2 daughters, so as the eldest, I naturally wanted to become a doctor so I could help my father. The problem was I wasn't smart enough to continue studying medicine, so I gave up. Now I have no choice but to marry someone who can take over the running of the clinic.
About 80,000 men are adopted every year in Japan by families who run businesses but have no male heir. That's a problem, since traditionally businesses are inherited by men. The phenomenon, known as mukoyoushi, has been around for centuries, and it's still popular today. So much so that Date has built her agency around bringing together heirless families and prospective adoption candidates.
Japan's fertility rate is falling dramatically. Today, more and more families have only daughters. They spend their whole lives being told that they have to marry a mukoyoushi. So when they become adults, they feel under pressure to do so.
Even big family-run conglomerates that find themselves without a male heir have survived after adopting a male successor. Osamu Suzuki, the chairman of Suzuki Motors, is among them. But for Mariko Fujiwara, the system is proof that Japan remains a male-dominated society.
The phenomenon of mukoyoushi reflects a division of labor by gender, which is a traditional thinking in the Japanese society, because they would rather have a son-in-law to carry on the business than their own daughter. And true, parents may not have exercised the strategies to educate their daughters to become successful business women.
In rural Japan, adopting men is helping address the shortage of young farmers. Hisamitsu Tannai, who has 4 siblings, decided to join the ranks of the mukoyoushi 2 years ago, marrying a woman whose family run a dairy farm. He moved a long distance from his home and took his wife's family name.
My
wife's father died before I arrived, and her mother is getting old. I don't think my wife and her mother could have managed to run such a big farm on their own. That's why I'm here.
The couple, who have a 2-year-old son, look like any other family. But being adopted as an adult comes with responsibilities. As well as caring for dozens of dairy cows, Hisamitsu has accepted that this must be a lifelong commitment.
I am now a member of the Hitomi family, so it's only natural that my ashes will be interred alongside the other members of the family. They welcomed me into their family, and families have to stay together, right to the very end.
The number of births in Japan dipped below 1 million for the first time last year, and more than a quarter of the country's population is aged 65 or over. That means the search for adopted male heirs like Hisamitsu is likely to continue for many decades to come.
Joining me now in the studio is Jean-Yves Collin from Asia Centre. Hello, thank you very much for coming in. Now, as we heard in that report, adopting a male adult to salvage a family business is an ancient practice. Could you talk us through the origins, how this came about?
Well, the origin is related to a Buddhist teaching, which is called the Pure Earth. It's a religion, part of Buddhism, which came from China through Korea, and we developed in Japan between the 7th century and the 12th, 13th century. And the practice of mukoyoushi developed very well during the Edo period, between the early 17th century and 1868, the Meiji Revolution. At first, it was for the samurai class. It's in a way to broaden a clan, a group of samurai. And later, it developed through merchants, small industrial companies. And it faded away somehow during the 20th century, but now it has a kind of a rebound due to the demographic situation of Japan.
That's the thing, because I have to say, I was wondering if you necessarily have to marry a daughter, why not just adopt a son who can take over the business? But part of the deal is also that they then have children to keep, to have someone else, another son to hand the family business to.
Yes, in fact, it is related to the situation of heritage in Japan. In Japan, you used to transmit your heritage or the management of your company to your first son, the elder son. So if you have no son, or if your son is incompetent, and if you have a daughter, you have a choice. Either the daughter will find a husband by herself, and in this case, you can adopt this young man. When I say young man, because I think he will be between 25 and 35. Or she has no liking for a man, and the pater familias, I would say in French, will try to find out somebody who fits the family, who fits the business. For instance, a doctor or somebody specialized in management, in company management.
Now, the adopted son, what is it frowned upon, or is it allowed? Is it acceptable for adopted men to keep in touch with their family?
Usually, when you enter a family, first of all, you drop your name, and you drop your name from the official register of the new family. So you change completely your name, and you forget, in a way, officially, legally speaking, your old family, and you have to pray for the ashes of your new family. So, of course, some men have contacts, but it's not very good in a way. You have to really to enter the world of your new family, because such men sometimes are in a, let's say, a little bit stressful situation. They have to please their wives, and they have also to please the father of their wife. So the stress of the management of the family and the management of the company is sometimes very heavy on their shoulders.
Now, what about other ways of working on the birth rate in Japan, and also are there other areas in which there have been progress on gender issues, because this doesn't have to continue this way?
Well, when I started knowing Japan about 40 years ago, I thought that the progress would be much faster. Now I'm a little bit less optimistic to some extent, and I would say there have been changes. Some jobs have been quite open to women. It's true, for instance, for fashion, but it's not true for banking, insurance, which are much more traditional. Of course, the media are quite open to women, but at the same time, I would say that the top management of the media remain extremely full of men. And for the medium-sized companies, I think the traditional way of managing the companies remains the same. I mean that it's run by men, and it's run by the first son or the elder son of the family. So it's a long issue to transform Japan, and it's also related to the role of women within a family. Usually, a woman, she has to raise the children. It's the main task of wives in Japan in the past. And when I say in the past, I mean until the 70s, 80s, 90s.
And how does the situation in Japan compare to other countries in Asia? Are there other countries with a similar system of adopting male men?
Well, it exists also in Korea. And because Korea and Japan are sometimes very similar, there is sometimes a kind of gap, but basically they are very similar. In China, it's quite different because it's one legacy of Maoism to have brought women to the front line. So at least it's a good part of Maoism in China. There are a lot of shortcomings, but this one is a good part of it. But in Korea and in Japan, societies remain quite traditional to some extent.
All right, thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis,
Jean-Yves
Collin from Asia Centre. And thank you for